I'm sitting in my car in the parking lot of St. Michael's Hospital, hands shaking so hard I can barely hold my phone. The text from Brandon is still on my screen, those words burning into my brain like a brand. "Mom says you pushed her down the stairs. I'm leaving work right now. You'll regret this." My stomach twists. I read it again and again. Pushed her down the stairs? I didn't push anyone down anything. I wasn't even home when it happened. I call him immediately. It goes straight to voicemail. His work number, same thing. I sit there for maybe 5 minutes just breathing, trying to make sense of this, when another text comes through. This one's from his mother, Linda. "Don't bother coming home. I'm calling the police." That's when I realize how bad this actually is. My name is Ashley, and I've been married to Brandon Hartley for 12 years. We met in college. He was in my biology lab, one of those guys who actually listened when you talked. We got married at the courthouse with our parents there, nothing fancy. And for the past decade, life has been good. Really good. The kind of good where you stop waiting for something to go wrong because you've convinced yourself that you've already won the lottery. But right now, sitting in this hospital parking lot in my scrubs, still smelling like the antiseptic from the ER where I'd been working a double shift, I'm starting to understand that winning the lottery just means you have further to fall. Let me back up. Let me tell you what good actually looked like for us. We bought our house in Riverside Heights about 8 years ago, a 3-bedroom colonial on Maple Street with a wraparound porch that Brandon painted himself over one summer. It's in this sweet suburban pocket about 20 minutes outside Chicago, the kind of neighborhood where people actually know each other's names, and there's a community Facebook group dedicated to stolen package alerts and recommendations for electricians. The house cost us $385,000, which felt insane at the time, but our real estate agent, Diane, kept saying we were getting a steal. Brandon was making decent money as a project manager at a construction firm, and I'd been working at Riverside General for 6 years, moving up from floor nurse to charge nurse in the ER. We did the whole thing right. We got a mortgage, we furnished the place slowly, we planted a garden in the backyard. Brandon's mother, Linda, came to visit for Thanksgiving the first year we owned it, and she actually cried when she saw it. That should have been my first warning sign, but I was too happy to notice. Linda is what my friend Jennifer politely calls a lot. She's 64, divorced from Brandon's father since Brandon was in middle school, and she spent the last 30 years making sure everyone around her knows that she sacrificed everything for her son. She tells this story constantly, how she worked double shifts at the hospital where she was a nurse, how she made sure Brandon had the best education, how she put him through college while getting her master's degree. The story is technically true, but the way she tells it, you'd think she'd single-handedly cured cancer. When Brandon and I got married, Linda made it clear that she was thrilled about the wedding, but also that she'd been Brandon's emotional support system for so long that our marriage would need to accommodate her role in his life. She didn't say it like that, obviously. She said it by showing up unannounced on Saturday mornings, by calling Brandon twice a day, by making comments about my cooking and my family's different values, and the way I was changing Brandon into someone she didn't recognize. But here's the thing. Brandon loved her, and he loved me, and for the most part, we made it work. He'd spend Sunday afternoons with her, he'd help her with her garden, he'd listen to her stories about her book club drama and her neighbors' problematic landscaping choices. I learned to smile and nod when she made her little digs at me. We had a system. Last year, Brandon and I had started talking seriously about kids. We'd been putting it off, the mortgage, the work hours, all of it. But we'd finally decided that 2024 was going to be our year. I went off birth control in January. We started tracking everything. It felt like we were finally ready to move into the next chapter. Everything was lined up. My salary had just bumped to $78,000 with the charge nurse position. Brandon had a promotion in the pipeline. He'd been managing a major commercial development project downtown, and his boss had been dropping hints about a senior manager role opening up in the spring. We paid down the mortgage to $280,000. Our credit scores were both in the 700s and 50s. We had $23,000 in savings. We'd gone to the pediatrician and gotten the "you're healthy enough to have kids" speech. We'd even started looking at better school districts. This was supposed to be the year everything got better. And then, last Monday morning, Brandon's mother fell down the stairs. The detective's name was Ramirez, and she showed up at my door 3 days later with a folder and a look that said she'd seen this movie before. I'd spent those 72 hours in a kind of suspended animation. Brandon hadn't come home. He was staying at his mother's place in her condo on the north side, and every text I sent went unanswered. His lawyer, a woman named Margaret Chen, who apparently specialized in family law, sent me a cease and desist email telling me not to contact him directly. The hospital had placed me on administrative leave, pending investigation. My own colleagues were treating me like I had a contagion. The police report said Linda had fallen down the stairs at our house on a Monday morning, around 9 a.m. She'd suffered a fractured tibia, 3 broken ribs, and a concussion. She'd spent 1 night in the hospital and was released into Brandon's care. The report listed me as a person of interest because I was the only other person in the house at the time, according to Linda's statement. Except I wasn't. "Can I come in?" Ramirez asked, standing in my doorway with her badge already out. She was maybe 50, with dark eyes that had perfected the art of not showing emotion. I let her in. My living room felt smaller with her in it. She sat down on the couch, the same couch Brandon and I had picked out together at Jordan's Furniture, and opened her folder. Inside were photographs of our staircase, the hardwood stairs with the cream-colored runner we'd installed last year, photos of the landing, the wall where Linda's head had apparently hit. "Walk me through Monday morning," Ramirez said. "I wasn't here. I was at the hospital. I work in the ER at Riverside General. I had a shift from 7 p.m. Sunday to 7 a.m. Monday. I didn't get home until after 8. Can anyone verify that?" "The entire ER staff. We had a code blue at 6:45. I was doing compressions. Check the hospital records." Ramirez made a note. "And your husband's mother was here alone before you left for work?" "She'd been staying with us for a week. She has a condo on the north side, but she visits frequently. She was asleep when I left Sunday evening." "And when you returned home Monday morning?" I closed my eyes. I could still see it exactly as it was. The front door was slightly ajar. My purse fell out of my hands when I stepped inside. Linda was lying at the bottom of the stairs, with Brandon kneeling beside her, his phone already dialing 911. "She was on the floor," I said. "Brandon said she must have fallen. He said he'd heard a crash from the kitchen and found her like that." "Did he seem surprised? Upset?" "Of course he was upset. His mother was bleeding." "That's not what I asked." I didn't answer because the truth was more complicated. Brandon had looked shocked, yes, but there was something else underneath it, a kind of resignation. Like he'd been waiting for something terrible to happen, and it finally had. Ramirez flipped through more pages. "Your mother-in-law is claiming you pushed her down the stairs. She says you were angry about something she said, that there was a confrontation, and that she fell as a result." "That's impossible." "Why?" "Because I wasn't home." "But you were home when she fell, according to your own statement." My brain stuttered. "No, I said I wasn't here. I was at work. I have the timestamp from when I clocked out." Ramirez pulled out another document, a printed email, from Brandon to his work, sent at 8:15 a.m. Monday morning. "My mother has had a serious accident. I'm taking her to the hospital. I'll update you when I know more." "Did your husband leave work early?" Ramirez asked. "Apparently so." "Did you know he was coming home?" "No." Ramirez closed the folder. "Here's what's interesting, Mrs. Hartley. Your husband's work records show he clocked out at 7:55 a.m. He lives 40 minutes from his office. That means he arrived home around 8:35, give or take. Your hospital records show you clocked out at 7:03 a.m. With traffic, you could have gotten home by 7:45, maybe 7:50. The room tilted slightly. "You're saying there's a window where I could have been here. I'm saying your mother-in-law is saying you were here, and unless you have someone who can place you somewhere else during that time." I was driving, alone, in my car. Do you have tolls, gas receipts, anything? I didn't. I'd driven straight home because I wanted to sleep. I hadn't stopped anywhere. Ramirez stood up. I'm going to be honest with you because I think you deserve it. Your mother-in-law's injuries are consistent with a fall down the stairs. There's no evidence of blunt force trauma that would suggest being pushed. But there's also no evidence of anything else. No security camera footage. You don't have a system. No witnesses. And right now, your husband is telling people he came home because his mother called him in a panic, saying you'd hurt her. He's lying. Is he? Because he's got his mother saying the same thing. And right now, it's 2 against 1, and one of those people is the victim. After Ramirez left, I sat on that couch for 3 hours without moving. Brandon was lying. He had to be. But why? What possible reason would he have to? And then it hit me. The promotion, the senior manager position, the one he'd been waiting for since January. I pulled up his work email on my phone. We had a shared cloud account for family stuff. I shouldn't have had access to his work emails, but we'd set it up years ago when I was helping him organize a big project. He'd never changed the password. There were 17 emails from his boss, Derek, dating back 2 weeks, all of them about the senior manager position, all of them saying the same thing. Derek wanted to give it to Brandon, but there had been some concerns raised by HR about Brandon's stability and his ability to handle the stress of the role. The emails mentioned my name, and Linda's visits, and something about family drama affecting work performance. The last email, sent Friday afternoon, said, I want this to be your role, Brandon, but we need to see that you've got things under control at home. Let's talk Monday morning. I scrolled further, found a draft email Brandon had written but never sent. It was addressed to Derek and dated Sunday night. I need to tell you something that might affect our conversation Monday. My mother has been staying with us, and my wife has been increasingly hostile toward her. We're worried about the situation escalating. I may need to take some time to handle this. I'm sorry about the timing with the promotion. He was setting me up. He'd been setting me up since Friday, probably before. He knew Derek was going to ask about the family situation, and he needed a crisis to explain why he couldn't handle it. A crisis that would make him look like the victim and me like the villain. And then Linda fell down the stairs. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely type. I called my divorce attorney. Her name was Patricia Wolcott, and I'd kept her card from when Brandon and I had done our prenup years ago. I'd never thought I'd actually need her. I think my husband and mother-in-law are framing me for assault, I said when she answered. There was a pause. Tell me everything. I did. I told her about the text, about the police visit, about the draft email, about the timeline that made me look guilty. I told her about the promotion and Derek's concerns, and Brandon's desperation to prove he had his life together. Patricia listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, We need to get ahead of this. Do you have the draft email still? Yes. Forward it to me, and do not, under any circumstances, contact your husband or his mother. Don't text him, don't call him, don't show up at his office. Everything you say can and will be used against you. From this moment forward, all communication goes through me. What do I do? You wait, and you let me do my job. The waiting was worse than anything. By day 5, the local news had picked up the story. Woman accused of attacking mother-in-law, the headline read. They didn't use my name, not yet, but they didn't need to. Everyone at Riverside General knew. Patients were asking to be reassigned from my care. My supervisor, Maria, called me into her office and told me that the hospital had decided to extend my leave indefinitely. It's just precautionary, she said, but her eyes wouldn't meet mine. Brandon filed for a restraining order. I got the papers on day 8. He claimed I'd been threatening and hostile toward Linda, that I'd made multiple aggressive statements, and that he feared for his mother's safety if she returned to our shared home. The hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks out. That's when Patricia called with news. I had an investigator look into your mother-in-law's background, she said. She's done this before. What do you mean? In 1998, she filed a police report against her ex-husband, your father-in-law, claiming he'd pushed her down the stairs of their home. The case was dropped when she refused to cooperate with investigators. In 2003, she filed a similar report against one of her neighbors, claiming he'd physically assaulted her. That case was also dropped. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Why would she do that? Could be personality disorder. Could be she needs the attention and concern. Could be she's extracting leverage, money, control, guilt. I don't know. But what I know is that this is a pattern. The restraining order hearing happened on a Wednesday morning at the Cook County Courthouse. Brandon was there with his own lawyer, a slick guy named Richard Kowalski, who looked like he'd been suing people since the Reagan administration. Linda sat behind them in a neck brace that I was pretty sure she didn't actually need. Patricia had prepared me for what to expect. They'll present their version of events. We'll present evidence that contradicts it. The judge will decide if there's enough risk to grant the order. Brandon testified first. He talked about my erratic behavior and my jealousy of his relationship with Linda. He mentioned fights we'd had about her visits. He painted a picture of a woman who was unraveling and potentially dangerous. None of it was true, but it was strategically crafted. He was right that we'd argued about Linda. He was right that she visited frequently. He was wrong about everything else, but the half-truths were more dangerous than outright lies. Then Linda testified. She described the Monday morning in careful detail. She said she'd been making breakfast when she heard me yelling from upstairs. She said I'd come down the stairs in a rage, that I'd called her names, that I'd pushed her. She even cried at the right moments. I wanted to scream. I wanted to stand up and tell everyone she was lying. But Patricia had warned me, stay silent, stay calm, don't react. When it was my turn, I testified that I'd been at the hospital the entire time, that I had documentation to prove it, and that I had no idea how Linda had fallen. I explained that I was concerned about a pattern of false accusations. I said I loved my husband, but that I believed he was being manipulated. Richard Kowalski cross-examined me for 40 minutes. He picked at every detail, twisted every statement, made me sound defensive and guilty. He asked about fights with Linda, about texts where I'd complained about her visits, about one time I'd said something like, "Your mom is exhausting," to Brandon. "So you admit to having negative feelings toward your mother-in-law?" he asked. "I admit to being frustrated sometimes, yes. That doesn't mean I pushed her down the stairs." "Doesn't it?" Patricia objected, but the damage was done. The judge was a woman named Ellen Rothstein, probably in her 60s, with silver hair and a tired expression. She reviewed the medical records, the hospital documents, the police report. She listened to all the testimony. And then she issued her ruling. Based on the evidence presented, I find insufficient grounds to grant a restraining order at this time. However, the court notes that the circumstances surrounding this incident remain unclear, and both parties are advised to maintain civil distance until the matter is fully resolved. Brandon's face went red. Linda started crying, real tears this time, I think. We won. Technically, the restraining order was denied, but it didn't feel like a victory because the damage was already done. My reputation was shredded, my job was gone, my marriage was in free fall. That night, Patricia called with more news. The detective has been doing additional investigation. She found something interesting. Your husband's mother has extensive medical history, multiple hospitalizations, multiple surgeries, some of them elective. She's been to 17 different doctors in the past 5 years. What does that mean? It might mean nothing. Or it might mean she has Munchausen syndrome or something similar. But here's what matters. The detective also interviewed your neighbor, Mrs. Chen. Apparently, she was outside on Monday morning watering her garden. She saw your husband arrive home at 8:40 a.m. She also said that Linda had called her on Sunday evening asking if she could borrow some pain medication because her back was bothering her. My breath caught. Why didn't she come forward? Because she's terrified of getting involved in a family matter, but I've convinced her to give a statement. And I've also found the medical records from Linda's ER visit. The doctor noted that her injuries were consistent with a fall, but also noted that patient was remarkably calm for someone with 3 broken ribs. What does that mean? It means the case against you is falling apart. The question is whether we can prove what actually happened. What actually happened, Patricia explained, was likely one of two things. Either Linda had actually fallen, or Linda had staged the fall. Either way, I hadn't pushed her, but proving I hadn't done something is harder than proving someone else did. We went back to the police department. Patricia brought everything we'd uncovered: the pattern of false accusations, the neighbor's statement, the timeline that didn't fit, the emails showing Brandon's motivation. She presented it to Detective Ramirez like someone laying out a blueprint. Ramirez listened, and when Patricia finished, she said something that made everything click into place. "I've been a detective for 24 years. I've seen this exact scenario maybe a dozen times. Usually it's an elderly person who's been isolated, who's lost their sense of purpose, who's looking for a way to matter again. Sometimes it's someone with a personality disorder who thrives on crisis. And sometimes it's someone working with another person to orchestrate something for a specific reason." "You think they planned this together?" I asked. "I think your husband needed a crisis, and his mother needed to feel needed, and together they created one. But here's the thing about patterns. They only work if everyone keeps playing their part." On Friday morning, 2 weeks after the restraining order hearing, Brandon's boss Derek called him into his office. Derek had been contacted by the detective. Derek had been told about the draft email. Derek had been told about the timeline. And Derek had realized that his employee had orchestrated a family crisis to get out of a difficult conversation about his ability to handle stress. Brandon was fired. Not just removed from the promotion, terminated for cause. The reason listed was gross dishonesty and conduct unbecoming an employee. His law license didn't matter. He wasn't a lawyer, but his reputation did, and in the construction industry, reputation is everything. I found out because Patricia called me. "Your husband is trying to negotiate," she said. "He wants to make a deal. He'll sign a full retraction of all claims against you. He'll withdraw the restraining order petition, and he'll agree to a no-fault divorce with a settlement that favors you significantly if you agree not to press charges for filing a false police report." "Can you press charges for that?" I asked. "Technically, yes, it's a crime, but it's also expensive and complicated, and most people don't pursue it." I thought about it for maybe 30 seconds. "What about Linda?" "Linda is his problem now, not yours." That's when I made the decision that probably saved my life. I said yes. The divorce was finalized in 4 months. I kept the house. I got 60% of the liquid assets, about $14,000 from our savings. Brandon was ordered to pay $1,200 a month in spousal support for 2 years, even though we'd been married 12 years, because his lawyer argued he was now unemployed and underemployed. I didn't fight him on it. I wanted him gone more than I wanted money. The hospital offered me my job back once the police investigation was officially closed and the charges dropped. Maria actually apologized, which meant nothing and everything. But I didn't go back. Instead, I used some of the settlement money and took the licensing exam for nursing in Wisconsin. I got a job at a hospital in Madison, an hour and a half away from Riverside Heights. I sold the house, made a decent profit actually, and bought a small condo with a down payment from the proceeds. I filed taxes as a single person for the first time in 12 years. I opened a savings account in just my name. I went to therapy and talked to Dr. Patel about trust and patterns and whether I'd somehow invited this into my life. "You didn't," she said simply. "You just loved someone and assumed they loved you back the same way. That's not a character flaw. That's being human." A year after the divorce was finalized, I got a text from Jennifer, my old friend from Riverside Heights. She'd seen Linda at the grocery store, wearing a surgical boot. Linda had apparently told her that she'd had another fall, and that Brandon had moved out because he couldn't handle the stress of caring for her. I didn't respond to the text. Jennifer probably understood why. The money I got from the divorce is almost gone now, but I've rebuilt my savings. I'm up to $18,000. My credit score recovered to 712. I've been promoted to charge nurse at my new hospital, and I'm making $81,000 a year. I'm dating someone named Marcus who's a pediatrician and who listens when I talk and who has never once made me feel like I was too much or not enough. The hardest part wasn't the investigation or the hearing or losing my job or losing my house. The hardest part was accepting that someone I'd loved for 12 years had looked me in the eye and lied about pushing his mother down the stairs, and that he'd been willing to watch me go to prison to cover it up. That broke something in me that I'm still trying to rebuild. But here's what I know now. Sometimes the person who loves you and the person who destroys you are the same person. And sometimes you don't get justice. Sometimes you just get distance and time, and the slow understanding that what happened wasn't your fault and wasn't your failure. Sometimes survival is enough, and sometimes, if you're very lucky, it's just the beginning.